The woman refused the man's romantic advances without hesitation. Her attitude was clear and resolute, as if declaring to the world that she would not be swayed by another's deep affection. The man repeatedly explained his own shortcomings. His feelings were genuine in that moment, but equally true was how quickly he would fall for someone else. Joe and Lori met at an evening ball where Joe's dress hem had been scorched. Her sister Meg repeatedly cautioned Joe to stay still, so no one would notice the flaw. Unfamiliar with ballroom etiquette, Joe stood alone, lost in thought. An equally overlooked young man beckoned to her, leaving Joe unsure how to respond. She had no desire to dance with a stranger, yet by happy accident, she encountered Lori. Lori had just returned from Europe to his hometown. The unfamiliar surroundings led him to seek solitude in a corner. Perhaps due to their similar temperaments, Joe and Lori felt relaxed and cheerful together. They danced gracefully in the hallway, away from prying eyes. Unfortunately, before they could fully enjoy themselves, Meg accidentally twisted her ankle. Lori invited Joe and Meg to see a play. Amy begged to join them, as she greatly enjoyed Lori's company. In the end, her sisters ignored her pleas. Later, when Joe tried to record the evening's events, she couldn't find her manuscript. Amy, seeking revenge against Joe, had burned Joe's novel that she had worked on for so long. Amy's mistake was so foolish that Joe swore never to forgive her and couldn't bear to be around her for a moment. Just then, Lori came to invite Joe skating. They glided far along the riverbank, enjoying their rare time alone together. Everything seemed beautiful in the sunlight. Suddenly, they heard Amy's cries for help behind them. The inexperienced Amy had fallen through the ice. Fortunately, Lori reacted quickly, using a tree branch to pull Amy back onto solid ice. Joe felt incredibly remorseful. If anything had happened to Amy that day, she would never have forgiven herself. Joe's mother recognized her daughter's kindness and guilt. She assured Joe that everything was in the past and that a family together could be happy even in modest circumstances. Their wealthy aunt held the opposite view. She lived alone to preserve her fortune and constantly advised Joe to marry a rich man. In that era, unless a woman inherited wealth from her husband, she could rarely live independently. The aunt offered to take Joe traveling in Europe to find a suitable match. But Joe was stubborn, determined to prove that love wasn't a woman's only option. She believed she could achieve freedom and respect on her own. The beautiful days of youth are always fleeting. The young men and women gradually grew up, each following their own path in life. Meg fell in love with a tutor, a man neither wealthy nor particularly handsome. This differed greatly from her childhood dreams of marriage, yet Meg fearlessly became engaged to him. Joe strongly objected to her sister's decision. In her eyes, once a woman married, she would lose her aspirations and live without a sense of self. Amy, the artistic younger sister, caught their wealthy aunt's attention. The aunt took her to Europe to study art, where the learning environment was more advanced and living conditions more comfortable. Amy finally lived the life she wanted. In Europe, Lori encountered Amy. As they spent time together, Lori gradually found himself drawn to her, developing romantic feelings. However, on one hand, Amy already had a suitable marriage prospect. On the other hand, though Amy had always been fond of Lori since childhood, she refused to be Joe's substitute. So she firmly rejected Lori, but under Lori's persistent pursuit, Amy finally believed his feelings for her were genuine. She abandoned her existing suitor and chose to be with Lori. Due to the illness and death of Beth, the third sister, Joe and Lori met again in town. Lori told Joe that he and Amy had decided to get engaged. He finally understood that his former feelings for Joe differed from what he now felt for Amy. Both found closure at last, embracing and wishing each other well. Joe began writing at home. She thought perhaps her life would always be spent alone. But on a rainy night, her professor arrived after a long journey. This time, she wouldn't miss her chance at love. Joe threw herself into the professor's arms, finally finding her own happiness.